Welcome to the First Responders Wealth Network. Our mission is to help all first responders change their mindset towards money and educate how to build long-term wealth through real estate investing. Are you ready?
All right, cool guys. So I'm super excited. I got Brandon Dawson here, powerhouse entrepreneur. He's a family man, but he's also a real estate investor, which we'll talk about that as well, Brandon, about certain things that you invest in. And but the big one, just to kind of jump out at you, he literally sold his company for 150 mil at 29 years old, and there's a whole story behind that, and obviously a growth story behind that. But maybe you can just introduce yourself, Brandon. And I did learn that actually part of your journey started up here in Canada, which I'm just outside of Toronto.
Yeah, so I'm going to correct a couple things. I took my first company public when I was 29.
Oh, okay.
And that was a private equity backed deal, and it was a Canadian company trading on the Alberta Stock Exchange. And then I moved it to the United States and listed on the American Stock Exchange and rang the opening bell at 29 years old. I took that business over when I was 26, and I was the first consolidator of hearing clinics and audiology clinics in Canada. Opened some balance centers, vestibular centers in Calgary, and then came down to the US and put hundreds of millions of dollars worth of businesses under letter of intent, took it public on the American Stock Exchange and delisted out of Canada. When that business sold, because my private equity group wanted to sell it in 2001, right after 9/11, they said, we're liquidating the fund and we're just flushing everything. And it was a very painful part of my life. After I had to wait out a 2-year non-compete, I launched my new model, my new business with a whole different strategy that was more people-centric. And that's the business I sold for $151 million in 2016.
2016. Okay, my numbers are off.
No, that's okay. I just want to make sure the record's straight.
Yeah, cool. But you were also the youngest one at the time to ring the bell at the stock exchange too, right?
That's what they told me when they said we've never, now I'd be the old guy at 29, right? Because I always laugh. I say, yeah, there's billionaires ringing the stock exchange at 13 now. You know, it's just crazy what's happened with technology.
It's a different time for sure, but still, nonetheless, that's bragging rights, buddy. So cool. So obviously you're an entrepreneur, you've got mass scale, and now you've teamed up with GC doing your 10X and CardoneVentures stuff, which we can get into a little bit later. But as you know, I focus on real estate. And so I think, well, I'll ask you first, what type of real estate have you invested in, and what are you looking at now?
Yeah, so since 2020, so 20 years, my first major investments was in mini storages, and I have 3 partners, and we are the largest holder of storage units in Vancouver, Washington, with about 650,000 square feet, 6 different complexes worth about $100 million. And currently I have just finished the grading work to add another 250,000 square feet on a 7th complex. So mini storages, I've acquired 60,000 square foot warehouses, built a couple medical buildings, and I own some office buildings, and I'm in the process of potentially acquiring a 3rd in Scottsdale, Arizona. So between Washington State and Scottsdale, Arizona.
So being focused in your industry and in your business and growing your business and everything, what made you lead towards the storage units? And was it just because you were able to have certain access, you could dump some capital into something, or was it like?
Yeah, because I'm a business guy, and so one of my business partners came to me, a friend of mine, and he said, "Hey, I got these storage units locked up, but the deal's falling apart. The owner's 76 years old. He's a little stubborn. They're underperforming, and I've got them in contract, and we can't seem to get to closure." And since my expertise is in negotiations and deal construction, he came to me, constructing acquisitions, and I've done over 120 acquisitions in my career. So he came to me and he's like, I don't know how to work with this guy. It's hard to get anywhere. And so he said, if you can save this deal, I'll let you buy in with me. And so I went in and met with the seller, and I constructed the deal. I got everybody in the right place, and we closed on it. And he and his dad each took 25%, and I brought my mom in, and my mom and I each took 25% because my mom knew his dad. and I was friends with him. So it was kind of a family affair. And then his dad passed away. And so now it's him, my mom, and I. And we put my old CFO for my public company in, who's been managing them since 2000 using my operating strategies. So it was a vehicle for me to invest. And you know what, I'm a business guy. So just like in addition to those, I've got, I'm Grant Cardone's, besides Grant, I'm the second largest investor in Cardone Capital. So I like to invest with business partners and with entrepreneurs in real estate that take an active position in managing and deal constructing. And Grant is the world's best. So there's no point in me trying to go out and waste my time trying to find deals and negotiate them when I can draft behind somebody who's a vested, interested, very successful person at what he does. And so therefore, I want to go work with businesses and people. I don't want to be looking at real estate. It's not my passion. It's an investment vehicle, the passive income investment vehicle.
But it seems like you've really stuck with mini storage, and that's been very successful over the years. It's basically like apartments without the clientele.
Yeah, I mean, storage has been good to us. You know, the multifamily stuff that I've been in with Grant now for the last year and a half is exceptional. He outperformed the market during COVID. I mean, he's just an expert at operating his properties and making sure everybody's aligned with exactly what to do to be in front of issues before they happen, which is why I partnered with him.
So if you're the second, who's the first?
Grant.
Oh, okay. That was a trick question. I wanted to see if he was he was actually the first one.
He's the largest, and then I'm the second, and then there's a group of people behind us.
That's awesome. No, I know some of the properties that you guys are investing in. It's it's Class A properties for the most part. It's yeah. Very, very.
And how he picks them is brilliant because he picks stuff that's not that far above the average market rent, but they're exceptional properties. Every single property I've toured and I've gone and seen, I would personally live in.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's kind of my bellwether. Would I live here and who lives here? And he's picking stuff that retirees would want to live in, professional people would want to live in. So, and the market rents aren't that much higher. So people have a pride of ownership. They want to be there and they love the environment and they love the community they're in. And so he picks stuff that creates that is exceptional when it comes to value creation. So, that's my bellwether. If I would live there, if I think, man, these are crazy. The new ones he's buying in Fort Lauderdale, I would go live. If the offices were in Fort Lauderdale, I would be living in those units.
Now, how much are those renting for? Because I know, like, I've seen a bunch of his stuff. It's like $1,500 to $1,800, maybe.
Yeah. The ones in Fort Lauderdale are $1,800. I mean, it'd be a steal because it's on the waterway. It's just crazy. He's just so good at sneaking and snaking and finding these things and negotiating and cramming down on the sellers and getting the best rates. Like, I just don't know, I don't know anybody who could go get a 3% interest only for 10 years. Or 3.2 or whatever it is. And yeah. I can't even negotiate that on my deals. So, it's just when somebody knows what they're doing and they've got a lot of momentum and they've got the reputation and he is definitely noticed in the real estate world now. So, like drafting behind successful people is the easiest way to success, which I think for the people that watch your show that are out there risking their lives every day, pursuing the thing that they're passionate about, caring and taking care of other people, to be able to have a vehicle that they can attach to, that they don't even have to worry about that while they're doing what they're doing over time. So at one point they can sit back 10 years, 12 years, 15 years later, and they don't have to work anymore. There's no such thing anymore as pensions and retirements. My grandpa was a commander or captain in the Oregon State Police. He was a cop from when he graduated high school all the way until he retired at 55. And then he lived on his pension. And even then he built houses every year. He'd build a house or two to make extra money. And then after retirement, he built houses all the way up till he passed away at 82 years old. He was stronger than an ox. But being a state police officer didn't pay his lifestyle. He had to make extra money, And so my uncle was a sheriff. And the commitment to communities in law enforcement, police and fire, all those things. You're not going to get wealthy off it. And it's, as somebody who lives in communities, so appreciate people that are doing that, but to be able to bring to them a strategy so that while they're doing that and taking care of everybody else and risking their life, especially in today's world, there's such a lack of gratitude for what these professionals do, even healthcare professionals, all of them. And it's just unbelievable what I'm seeing right now. There needs to be something other than the primary job and focus, because people can get injured, they can get hurt, they can get disabled, or they can work fast for 30 years can go by and they realize they don't have enough in the retirement or pension to take care of the rest of their life. So yeah, I think the work you're doing to try to help people see beyond that is really cool.
Well, thanks. It's a strange time, man. I mean, we're getting pinched in all directions, whether it be, the narrative of defunding or just the support. And I mean, I'm fortunate up here, but down in some areas of the States, as you know, it's a whole another world. So it's difficult. But you talked about like expanding and doing more outside the workplace. I mean, I know you're in your past, you've talked to some guys and some police in some agencies. You're talking about how to build other income, and the one thing that I've just found over the years that's consistent, and it's a slow growth vehicle, which is real estate. But I mean, the security that it brings you over time and the additional income that it brings you over time. And you talked about pensions, and that's the one thing I always talk about too, is the pensions are slowly corroding, and they're slowly they're having difficulty. I mean, they're relying so much more on the returns, and the input is getting down. It used to be 9-1 up here, Brandon, for input to output, and now it's 2-1, and they're going to 1-1 in the next 5 to 10 years. So I mean, how do you sustain a system and a foundation like that? You can't. So, and I mean, there's evidence all over North America and
everybody's money just became 28% less valued with all the injection of capital that's coming in the market, and it's going to happen again. So, you got to make a lot to keep up with what you've got.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And that's the one thing. It's a slow progression of real estate. So I mean, it's tested, tried and true, over time. But what have you found when you were talking to the stations that you're talking to me earlier? You're helping present different people. I think it was sell insurance or that sort of thing. Did you find the attitude of first responders kind of difficult to tap into, or was there a lot of like thirst for people to get that secondary income down there?
I'll be honest with you. Police and fire aren't the most trusting of people. Their environment, they trust each other and they trust their family and close friends, but they're just exposed to so much. I had a lot of friends. I was on the Police and Fire Foundation in Vancouver, Washington with the chief of police, and for a few years. And I used to do fundraisers for protective equipment for both police and fire. So I became very friendly with many of the police officers and the sheriff's department and stuff. In fact, in 2002, I got Law Enforcement Hero of the Year award because I took care of a neighborhood issue that was happening in the middle of the night. And so I got to know everybody because of that. It was Clark County Law Enforcement Hero of the Year. So it's pretty crazy. But the deal is a lot of these guys would express to me their concerns about their family, about their health, wellness, and safety, about disability. And nobody wants to be dependent on some third party that they don't know really has their vested interest at heart, right? Mm-hmm. So politicians change things in cities, city council people change things, and mayors will change things. So being in total control of your own destiny. So I would show these guys how to create a secondary income. I have a friend, my number one mentor, Hector Lamarck, is one of the top guys in Primerica Financial Services. And I met, just over the years of being with him, I met so many people that Hector had taught to make $1 million a year of passive income, and or $100,000 here, or whatever. And I was just really super impressed. So I learned the Primerica system when my public company sold in the 2-year gap, because I wanted to train how Hector's sales trained. So I got into that system to learn it. And I started sitting across the kitchen table. I went from buying multi-million-dollar businesses and taking companies public and raising tens of millions of private equity, to sitting across the table talking to people about $50 a month life insurance to protect their family. It was really a humbling experience. It was a great experience for me because I did it to learn a system, to develop a deeper system and learn operational effectiveness. In the process, I recruited a lot of my police and fire buddies and started showing them how to do this so that they can make a secondary income. And then for them to be able to take that capital and throw it into real estate instead of buying boats and stuff, so that in 10 or 20 years, they could retire twice. They could have their own money that's paying them, and then they could have their pension and stuff. And then if one did not happen, they weren't completely at risk with the other. And so, it's funny because one of my good friends, this is really a sad story. My assistant, her husband was a sergeant, and he was a really good friend of mine. It was the first guy I recruited into Primerica. He and I sat across 100 of his buddies. And in 2013, she came up to me, and I was doing a big meeting with John Maxwell, Jim Collins, Story Musgrave, the only astronaut that flew all 5 space shuttles and built, deployed, and fixed Hubble. So really a brilliant guy. And she was in charge of that program for me. And 90 days before the actual event, she came in my office she was white as a ghost. I said, "What's the matter?" She said, "Wayne just got diagnosed with terminal cancer. He has less than 4 months to live. I have to go home."
Wow.
And, this guy was my best friend.
Yeah, man. It's the sad part that really bothers me is, and I talk about this with guys on the job all the time, is, you work your 30 years, 25 years, whatever it is, you're getting ready to retire. And if you're only relying on that pension, and again, this isn't, I can't compare to your story here, but it's just to use it as an example for everyone is, if you retire and 2 weeks down the road, you're going out for dinner and you get hit by a car and you and your wife are gone, where does that pension go? It does not go to your kids. It does not get passed down. So all that work that you've been putting into for your life is gone. And no one
legacy.
There is no legacy at all. And there's no security there for anything to hand down to your kids, depending on their age, obviously. But it's just one of those things where you never know what's going to happen tomorrow. And just like on the job, you don't know what's going to happen. I'm going on shift, after this interview. I don't know what I'm going to face throughout the day. There's always that chance of never coming home. So it's
100%, dude. And I think
you have to take care of yourself.
I think you have to find a strategy. I used to talk to all my cop buddies and my fire buddies, and I say, "Listen, man, you cannot depend on your sheer willpower." And Wayne was such a big wake-up call because he was, 38, 40 years old, healthier than I was. And he went from perfectly fine to dead in 5 months. And you just don't know. And so fortunately, this is the part of this though. When I recruited Wayne, one of the first life insurance policies I wrote on my own was on Wayne.
Wow.
So it paid enough for his wife and kids. And by the grace of God, because police, he didn't have enough in I think it was 1-time salary or 2-time salary or some small number. It wasn't an on the job thing. He assumed though, I remember having this conversation with him. He assumed though, he's like, "No, I got life insurance through the police."
Yes.
And then after doing work, I worked on it and I'm like, "Dude, you only have it if you get injured in the line of duty, or get killed in the line of duty. You don't have it if you go get in a car accident."
Yeah.
So imagine I take that policy out on him a year earlier for $500,000 for $50 a month. He does the blood test. The guy's fine. Nothing comes back. And he was dead within 15 months of that.
Yeah.
So, you just don't know. And learning to be self-sufficient and self-resilient, I think, is really important in the work you're doing of trying to educate people and provide that structure for them is important.
Thanks, man. I appreciate that. If there was 1 or 2 things that you could maybe suggest to, not just for real estate, but I think really it's important to work on yourself and kind of get yourself in alignment and then have that goal and then really focus on that goal. Where can people kind of start, whether it be literature, mentors, that sort of thing?
I did 50 podcast shows on the sub, just they're short, they're 12 to 15 minutes, consolidating all the stuff I've learned from many of the thought leaders beyond positive thinking, Dr. Robert Anthony on belief and the power of positive thinking and the power of self-creation, John Maxwell on leadership, all 53, 54 of his laws. I broke them down, restructured them, turned them into an operating process. Jim Collins, all his work, Good to Great, Great by Choice, How the Mighty Falls. Michael Gerber, E-Myth. You got Sharon Lechter. 3 Feet from Gold is a fabulous book on how close people get to success and then back off. Outwitting the Devil is very important for people to understand why they get put in a hypnotic trance, basically, of just going through the motion, and why that works against them versus intentionally creating your path and making sure you're comparing it to where you want to be from where you're at and being very intentional about that. And then obviously the 10X rule and sell or be sold, because the biggest issue every human has is they don't know how to present themselves. And if you can't present yourself in a very structured, very intentional way, you get pulled into drifting. What 10X rule, when you put 10X rule on top of all those other bodies of work I mentioned, it's like throwing gasoline on a bonfire. It just completely takes your mind and takes it through expansion. And I would just ask the people that are watching the show to think about something right this minute, which is if they went back 5 years or 10 years ago and they were to describe how they saw themselves today, their present self. So if they went to their past self, have they accomplished all the things they would have dreamed about back then that they wanted to be able to create? When I was a kid, I wanted a Ferrari, or when I was a kid, I wanted to have or when I was a kid, I wanted to have a family where I could go do sports with my kids. And, as I grew up as a young adult, this was my target. How clear was your target 10 years ago, and how close to that target are you today? And then just scale it from a 1 to 10. 1 being nowhere near it, 10 being I've accomplished everything I thought about. And the reason this is important now, some people will say, I don't know, I didn't really think about it back then. So then I say, okay, now grade your life. A scale 1 to 10. Whatever you've done, how unbelievably excited are you about what you've created for yourself? If you're a 10, that's fabulous. If you're a 1, that's horrible, right? So either way, you can grade yourself. But then my next question is, if you took your present self and you thought about thinking forward 10 years from now, what do you want that life to look like for you, your family, your kids? Because this is the part, firefighters, military guys, police, they're in the moment so much because they're just they just living for another day to do what they got to do. Well, that might work for them in the moment, but it doesn't necessarily work for them in 10 years or 20 years, and it certainly might not work for their family. Mm-hmm. And so if they're not there, right? So to me, it's like if in your present moment, you're really super honest with yourself about where you sit versus where you saw yourself, or your overall satisfaction with your personal, professional, financial goals right now. Mm-hmm. If you're anything less than an 8, then you need to learn how to set targets. You need to learn how to visualize. You need to learn how to actualize. And then you need to learn the structured vehicles, real estate, passive income programs like Primerica that work, career shift if you want it to be, learning to be a teacher and a doer of what you're doing, perfecting your craft so you can monetize, teaching others how to do it bigger, better, faster, and accomplish more. Whatever you choose, because it has to be a personal choice and you have to go deep in it so that your 10-year goal can be accomplished. Look, I'm a 2.4 high school graduate. I told you at the beginning of the show, I was number 3 to be a cadet with the state police. I was 3rd on the list. And fortunately, they only hired 2 people that year. So what that required me to do is I started going to college and I hated it. So I started selling on the side, and I realized at 19, I liked selling more than I liked going to school. And I didn't become a state cadet because my grandfather, I wanted to follow my grandfather's tracks, and I didn't. So then I moved to Atlanta from Oregon, and I just started going and calling on doctors and basically developing my personal sales skills as a 2.4 GPA. So I wasn't that bright, but I was a hard worker. I was tenacious, and I loved selling things to people. And that progressed in my career to where I had saved enough money that when I wanted to quit a job where I was making 150 grand with a newborn and a 2.5-year-old and sell my house and everything and actually take a shot at an entrepreneurial path, I had the resources to do that. And so, I'm a firm believer that the more intentional, the bigger your picture. And you take 10X rule and you take sell or be sold and you dump that on all these other things. And then you look forward 10 years from now, whatever you want, you will create it if you're fixated on it. And if you allow the world to move you to drifting and just kind of wait to see what's going to happen, you'll land in you'll be used for somebody else's accomplishments. And so it's a personal choice of self-creation and actualization. And if you listen to my podcasts or you follow me on Instagram, I talk about all those things. And I believe any human being can do it.
Man, that's powerful. I think it's just, like you said, it's being honest with yourself and having that starting point, even just asking yourself those questions is the big one. So that was powerful, man. Thank you. That's huge. All right, man. So you mentioned your Instagram. Where can people get a hold of you and mention the title of your podcast just so people are aware?
Yeah. So at Brandon M. Dawson is my Instagram. And my podcast is the B. Dawson Show on iTunes and Spotify. And there's probably 50 different podcast shows I've dropped where I just break down each element of how to find a mentor, how to learn from your mentor, how to draft behind your mentor, how to meet your future mentor, how to set goals. The secret to life and success in life is to model. I got this straight from Hector Lamarck in 2000. I just played golf with him, and we have live in the same community in Cabo San Lucas. I just was with him last week. And so think about having a mentor that's been my mentor for 22 years and my best friend, and going and playing golf and still learning something new that reminds you of something you learned from him 20 years ago, right? That still works today. The secret to success, the fastest way to succeed is you only have to do 3 things: model, mimic, and master. If you do those 3 things, then you'll succeed if you find the right mentor and you're willing to do what your mentor did. You just simply need to model after your mentor, mimic what they did, and master it. And if you just take that focus and lock into the right person, which is why Grant has impacted so many people and why he has such a massive following, because Cardone U teaches you exactly how to model, exactly how to mimic, and exactly how to master, and then you apply it to the thing you're doing. As long as your target's big enough and there's leverage and you're smart enough about picking something that creates income, you can do anything. And so teaching police and fire and military how to do this is a gift. And I just, I respect that you're committed to doing that along with the work that you're doing.
Well, thanks, man. You guys can see why Brandon and GC have such an impact on me. So you got to start somewhere and then just follow the people who are doing it. I love it. That's awesome, man.
100%, dude.
All right. Well, thanks again for coming on. I respect your time. So I want to let you go. You got a multi-billion-dollar,
big things to do. Lots of things to do. Hey, I respect the fact you invited me on your show. I love it. I see you on my channels and I appreciate what you do for your country and your community. And, all the people that follow you, same to them, lots of love and lots of appreciation, especially right now.
Thanks, man. I'll be in one of your boot camps before you know it. So
Good talking to you.
Take care.
Thanks for listening. Don't forget to rate and review on iTunes. Also, check out our website at 911wealthnetwork.com or contact Dave directly at 911wealthnetwork.com. Stay safe out there.